My name's Todd Zehr. I'm the sanitary engineer, which is a glorified name for the janitor for soil biotics. And today we're going to talk a little bit about humates. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good, Todd.
Yep. Oh, okay. So we'll just dive. I'll just dive right into this. So humates they contain humic and fulvic acid, and they're going to put oxygen into the soil primarily by improving the soil structure. So we're going to turn dense, compacted soil into porous, crumbly, or aggregated texture. Okay, so we want to break down that hard pan that's in the soil, and typically that's contributed with high magnesium soils for the most part, a lot of residue, and then just all the heavy equipment being pounded over the fields. So humates, they don't generate oxygen gas themselves, but they act as a physical and a biological conditioner that'll open up those soil pores, allowing atmospheric oxygen to enter the soil more easily to get down to the roots and actually keep the biology alive in the soil. So I'm going to kind of unpack this a little bit for you, and we're going to talk about soil aggregation. So humics contain high amounts of humified carbon. There's a lot of different types of carbon, biochar, you've heard of that. Basically what they burn some material and then they put it on the field, but it's not a stable carbon. Stable carbon has to go through a humification process, and that's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years that the microbes and bacteria that were in that biomass when it went through the ice age converted that into what we call humic acid, fulvic acid, and then ulmic acid. Ulmic acid is the part that's not water soluble, but it's a very important component of humic substances because it has a CEC of 500. So it'll hold 500 times its weight in water. So those humates humates that contain a high amount of humified carbon that acts as like a binder, so it causing the tiny particles of soil like clay and silt to clump together into like a larger stable aggregate. So this process creates larger pore space between the clumps of soil that aggregate, that are brought together, which allow the oxygen and the water to penetrate more easily into the soil. So we're going to talk about loosening compacted soil. So in heavy clay soils, humates break up the density, creating spaces for root respiration. In sandy soils, they help create a structure that holds moisture rather than letting it just sit in a way that disperses throughout, basically through the atmosphere, through the air. Another thing that they're doing, they're going to be boosting the microorganisms activity in the soil as well. So humates act as a food source for microbes, which thrive and multiply in the soil. Then these living organisms create tiny passageways and tunnels as they move through the soil, which creates that soil porosity in the soil. Then we're going to talk about enhancing the root growth. So because humic substances foster a more porous soil, the roots can go deeper and branch out further. Deeper, more extensive roots allow for both structure, and they're able to gather more. The plants are able to gather more nutrients deeper in the soil profile. So, kind of in summary, so by opening up the soil and reducing compaction, the humates are going to create a breathable environment where the oxygen can move down to the root zone, passed through the rhizosphere of the soil to keep the microbes and bacteria alive, and also to allow more oxygen to get to those roots. I kept it pretty short, just to allow for questions and things like that.
Okay, Kylen, if you want to go ahead, and then we'll move forward from there.
Very good. Very good. All right. Yeah, I'll jump in here a little bit and just give you a brief background on myself. I've had the opportunity to it's really been a God thing, but the amazing opportunity to manage water in 46 of the 48 states. I am missing Vermont and New Hampshire. So if any of you have farms in Vermont and New Hampshire, I'd be more than happy to come help you. May as well fill this out. But over that course of time that we've been so blessed to be able to do this, I've noticed that there's different soils, different environments, different areas that do things similarly, but different depending on where you live for sure. I mean, Idaho, for example, they're growing on rock with a little bit of topsoil, totally different management there. But the one thing that I've found uniquely the same, no matter where we go, and Todd really hit on it, is if our soil can breathe, if our soil has pore space, if our soil has the ability to actually pull in air, it will actually be able to function a lot better. It will pull up a lot more nutrition with less nutrition inputs. And over the last 20 years, I've been able to use soil sensor technology, water-based technology to really start seeing how healthy our plants are and to see how healthy our soils are. So a lot of what GHA talks about and what Todd talks about, this is what I use sensors for to actually show with evidence what that soil profile is actually doing. So Chase, with that being said, do you have any other thoughts or comments that you want to launch out with here before I just go in and show a few things in a presentation?
Um, one thing, I guess, as for the guys that are kind of on this right now, uh, the one thing I did want to bring up as we bring this kind of stuff to our clientele, and even there's some other people on here that are working indirectly with us, but the one thing that really kind of led me to Kylan in a way was as we talked about water. He was the first guy that I ever met that said when he gets to heaven, he's got questions for God about water. And when I sat there, I chuckled, but then I sat there and I was like, this is a guy that's as passionate about water as I am about growing crops. And those are just the kind of guys that we're trying to put in place to help us manage our clientele, help us manage our farms better. And so just kind of props to Kylen on the water aspect. There's very few people that I don't think there's anybody that I've found that is really in the in this level of water as Kylen is. So yeah, that being said, Kylen, take it away and let's learn. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. So there's one thing that I will share with you guys. I am a continuously learning individual. I am learning all the time on what's happening with water, and it's very, very exciting to see what's going on with water as we move forward. But it's also a little bit disturbing too, because there's a lot of things going on in agriculture that are costing farmers a lot of money. It's really not that beneficial to our environment. And when we mix the two together, it's a real problem for our farmers. If we're hurting environment and we're losing money, that's an issue. So part of what we look at in wealthy soil is all about getting the water and the nutrition to function properly. And if we can get that system to function properly, then we can actually create something of high value for our growers. One of the things I will stress, if you are a fully rain-fed farmer, this is extremely important to you because you do not get to choose when to push start. If God doesn't give you rain, you have to be able to manage your water with only your soil. And those of us with irrigation, we get to push the irrigation button once in a while, but that can also be a detriment if we push it at the wrong time. So that's a big part of what we focus on here at Avant. So I'm gonna just dive right into the heat of it, and I want to share with you some numbers that give you an idea of what is actually going on with your largest input, whether you're a rain-fed farmer, whether you're an irrigated farmer. These numbers are going to blow your mind. Okay, and some of you may actually know this, but the gallons of water in 1 acre inch. The gallons of water in 1 inch of water across an entire acre comes up to a total of, come on, 27,154 gallons. That's a lot of water if you think about 1 inch of water across an entire acre. So gallons required on 160 acres, 4.3 million gallons of water. That's a lot of water. When you start looking at irrigation, that's a lot of water coming out of the ground. That's a lot of water coming out of the creek, wherever you're getting your water from. That's a lot of water. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting. We look at pounds of nitrogen, pounds of phosphorus, pounds of this, pounds of that. The pounds of water on 160 acres is 36,234,298 pounds. That's a lot of water. It is by far your biggest input. When you start thinking about inputs and you look at that much that you're putting out in the field, that much is being built into your cropping system. Guys, this is why we take it so seriously. If we do not get these numbers right, we have a problem. If we don't get them right, we have a problem. So when you start thinking about that being your biggest input, you have to ask the question, is the soil ready to handle it? Is the soil ready to handle it? And if it is, do I understand how that water actually moves through that soil? Am I actually understanding it enough that I can learn how to use the water correctly? Because if there's an input you do not want to get wrong, it's water. That's one that you want to get right. So I'm just going to dive in and ask you guys a question. And this is a little workshop that we do if we were live and we could get together in person. I would walk through this workshop with you. But this is actually, just imagine this now as a pot, just a planter pot that's maybe, let's envision this is a big one, like it's 3 foot deep. Okay. And what we're going to do with this pot is we're going to come in and we're going to put red water into this pot. Okay. And that red water, we're going to fill up the soil profile. And we're going to fill it up about halfway with red water. And then we're going to let it sit. So this would represent like a nice rain event. Maybe we get an inch of rain on some dry soil. This is going to represent a nice little rain event. Okay. And we're going to let it sit for about, a couple hours. Just make sure it's settled in well. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put yellow water. And put yellow water on top of the red water. Now, you'd ask, why would you do this? Well, because something is going to happen when we do this. If we put yellow water on top of red water, one of these three scenarios will happen. The yellow water is going to push the red water down. The red water will stay on top and the yellow water goes to the bottom, or it just all gets mixed up. So we're not going to take a lot of time here, but let's see if someone would like to take a stab at this and say, which one is right? Which one is right? If you could say which one of these three, which one's it going to be? Maybe you just put it in the chat if you know which one it is. Chase, you want to take it?
The yellow one, sorry.
The yellow one. You got two yellow ones. You got a 1 and you got a 2.
Good question. Number 2.
Number two. Now, before we go any further, does the person who answered number 2 want to tell us why?
I don't know why, Kylen. My theory is that it's already been tied up with the other stuff, and so it just kind of slipped through. I'm kind of hoping to learn.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're right. So here's the deal, guys. That red water into a dry soil, it's already attached to the soil particles, right? The water's already there. It's consuming its airspace. It's attached to that soil. So when you get new water coming in, new water hitting that red water who's already there, there's no plants pulling it out. It's just holding it. The yellow water has to go through the red water. It has to travel through the red water in order to find dry soil to connect to. That's the whole objective. Now, if you think about how this works out in the field in real life scenarios, in real situations, this is extremely critical if you're managing air, if you're wanting to get oxygen in that soil, but even more important if you're wanting to manage things like nitrogen. See, if you follow this, what I just shared with you, the last water on is going to be the first water out the root zone, unless you create room to hold the water. This is an extremely important element, guys, especially if you're in the rain-fed environment where you need to hold a lot of water because you don't know when it's going to come next, but you still have to have oxygen, and you've got nutrition out there that you're wanting to hold in place. You're wanting all this to work. You need to understand how all these soil particles and the airspace and everything works and functions together in a system. And when you understand the system, you'll understand what Todd was really saying about opening things up with humic, carbon, things of that nature. It's the one component that is getting hurt more and more and more in traditional farming practices. So when we start looking at the actual crop production phase, we think about where is water being pulled from? Where are we using water throughout the growth stage? So I want to touch on first when you plant the seed. We're about to go into planting season. And basically from the time you plant up until about that V8, V9 stage, you're going to pull all of your water out of the top 12 inches of the profile. Makes sense. That's the only place the roots are. The roots are growing, they're developing. But what we have to be careful with, is this is what I'm going to stress, is the next growth stage. You know, when you're at that V12 and you're pushing your way up towards that V tassel, and you want to make sure the plant's not stressing, you want to make sure everything is functioning well, it's getting nutrition, it's getting everything into the system. You want to make sure that that root system is still growing and the whole plant is still growing. But then we're going to hit this critical stage. And you think about, when do plants get hit most with disease? When do they stress the most? When are they struggling the most? And it's happening right about this stage. And this stage right here, if a plant goes through disease, if it goes through a phase when it cannot pull in all of its nutrition, this is when the plant is at its utmost peak of all water use, of everything that it's doing. What happens if the plant cannot oxygenate, doesn't have access to the air, doesn't have access to the nutrition? It's stressing out because it can't breathe. What happens at that point in time? That is a major issue. So it's a big part of why we focus on carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. It's why we focus on those three things. It's why we focus on nitrogen management. It's held into the soil. Those are the things we really want to focus on. So when we're looking at it on the irrigated acre, this is where we screw up by pushing the button too soon. And I'm going to try and show you this if we can get the timing right here. We use soil sensors to measure the effectiveness of a plant, okay? That's what I want to help you understand. The plant itself is what we're measuring. When we use soil moisture sensors, it's not really about the soil moisture content. Soil moisture content really isn't that important to me. What is important to me is what the plant can pull from that moisture content. I can have a 90% moisture soil and the plant will struggle by the time it gets to 85%. If we have tight airspace, we can have a lot of water holding capacity, but it's not plant available, no different than any other nutrient, right? You've got to be able to make your water available to the plant, okay? Now, we also think about, Todd mentioned deep roots. I'm going to show you one of the reasons why deep roots are so vital, okay? You've all seen this pie chart. It's everywhere. If you went to college, it's everywhere in your agronomy classes. It's all over. 45% mineral, 25% air, 25% water. And if you're blessed, you've got 5% organic matter. Here in Nebraska, we're at like 1.5, maybe some 2.5. There's a few guys. I know Jordan's got some higher. He's got some really nice organic matter in different places. There's some really good organic matter out here, but I have never seen a 5. I have not found a 5 yet. So it's one of the things that we have to look at and go, okay, well, that's great, but what's reality? So these numbers are critical if you really want to manage nutrition and you want to manage water through irrigation. If you think about it this way, if you have a 12 or 18 or even a 20-inch root system, and that's all you have for nutrition, that's all you have for water, that's all you have for air and oxygen management. That's it. If you're managing a root zone that's 20 inches deep, that's it. That's all you got. And you're expecting to pull out a 300 bushel crop out of that. Okay. Well, here's what I've found is the bigger your root, the bigger the fruit. Remember that. The bigger the root, the bigger the fruit. If you want to get really good, high profit crops, I'm not even as worried about the yield as much as I am getting all the nutrition into the ear, into the kernel, into that actual component that's going to pay me. That's what I want to get water to. I want to get nutrition into my kernels. I want that thing to weigh heavy. I want it to yield high. I want it to do all those components. But most importantly, I want all the nutrition I put on. We call it return on input. You want to get a really great ROI. You get a return on every input. And we measure those first. And that input on water, it affects every single other nutrient you put out there. It affects every other biological you put out there. It affects everything. So the more root that we have, the more fruit we have at a lower cost. So that's why we think a lot about this. And it ties in exactly to oxygen. Any questions on that before I dive into the sensors? Anything on your end, Chase? Nope.
Not yet.
Okay. So what I want to share with you guys here is, whoops, sorry, backed up one. So a soil sensor, when we put them into the ground, they kind of just think about the soil sensor market like you would John Deere case, right? You've got John Deere people, you've got Case IH people. We can sit here, you got Ford and Chevy people, all these different things. A soil sensor is really about the same way. They're all uniquely the same. If they're capacitance probes, which is what we use, they're basically all built the same way. And this is how they work. They have these little sensors in them, and there's 2 little magnetic sensors. And every 30 minutes, they will send a signal out into the soil. And that signal is a calibrated region. They're all individually calibrated from the manufacturer with a constant calibration. That's what you actually want. There's been a lot of discussion around, do we want to calibrate probes? Do we not calibrate probes? Blah, blah, blah. The truth of the matter is you want them calibrated to a constant. And you want them to measure a specific area, regardless of the soil, regardless of the condition they're in. You want a constant, kind of like a light bulb. A 100-watt light bulb puts out 100 watts of light, and it's consistent every time you turn it on. When a light bulb burns out, it just goes dark. There's no dimming down. You don't want to be changing this calibration. A constant is what you want, okay? That constant then allows you to actually see a story develop in the root zone. If you're trying to adjust calibrations to get everything perfect or to get the numbers to work, you're going to be so frustrated with this technology. You're going to be so frustrated you will throw it away and simply tell everybody it doesn't work. So what I talk about is learning how to use that constant data and learn the story in the root zone, because this is a plant story. This is not a moisture story. This is a plant story. And here's what you want to learn from it. If you're listening to the plant, and you're using soil moisture sensors. They may measure moisture, but it's all about the plant. So one of the things you got to look for is, what should a plant do at night? What do you want plants doing at night? You want them to shut down. You want them to shut off. You want them to go to sleep, if you will, because that's when that plant's pushing all the sugar, everything it's been photosynthesizing, and it's worked all day long. At night, it needs to relax. Let that sugar go back in, feed the biology that's working down in the soil. You want the plant to give back to the soil after it's been taking it all day long. And then the sun's going to come up the next day. When the sun comes up the next day, you can see that downward stair step. It's always moving forward and downward and forward. So we're always looking at photosynthesis, water drawing back out, transpiration happening. You want to see this. So if your soil sensors are working right, this is what we call a data signature. The signature means so much more than the number. How does the graph move? When you start seeing the graph move in a specific way, you can start learning what's going on in your root zone. So you see the plant stair step down, and then you see this moisture recharge, okay? This moisture recharge, and then you'll see a water drain off. You'll always see a recharge with some draining. This is one of the very first indicators of a healthy soil or an unhealthy soil, is the percentage of water draining after an irrigation or a rain event. You want to think about that. How much do I charge? It goes really high and then it drains off. How fast does it drain off? And how far does it drain off? This is a huge issue, because if you don't understand how far it goes up and how far it drains off, you don't even know if you have a good, healthy soil or not. Those are the kind of things that we watch for. So if you're using sensors correctly, you're actually identifying plant health components, plant elements, more than you are just moisture content. If all I want to do is know, hey, what's the moisture out there? I can go grab a handful of dirt and it tells me if it's wet or if it's dry. It still doesn't tell me what the plant's actually using. It's not telling me hardly anything if I'm just grabbing dirt and feeling it. But if I'm actually using sensors to manage the plant will actually tell me the story that I can learn from. Let me give you an example of what we started learning several years ago. This is actually 20-year-old data, but this is what we started learning in the very beginning with moisture sensors. So my business partner today is David Sloan. We actually have a nonprofit program called the Master Irrigator Foundation that has just literally become a brand new nonprofit here in March. So you're going to be learning a lot more about that in the next few months. But one of the things that David did is he's the first person to bring these types of soil sensors into the United States. This is actually a project that he did in Australia years ago. And it was the farmers in Australia that taught him how to properly see the data signature. And here's what they learned. They are so limited on water over there that they have to make the most out of every drop. So he noticed that the plants would stair step during the day, just like we talked about. But after, this is actually about 5-6 days. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after a wetting event, it would stair step down. But then at that end of that 5 days, the stair steps got a lot bigger, a lot bigger. Do you know what that is? That is an oxygenated soil. That is soil that can breathe, and it's breathing at maximum capacity. This is like the athlete when it's running and it's pumping blood and it's got nutrition that is being used. You want it to be able to breathe freely. This is what we call optimum transpiration. And that's what you really want a plant to do, is transpire at the highest level possible. That's what you want a plant to do. So if a plant is transpiring at a really high level and it's pulling up a lot of nutrition, guys, this is huge. You need to have a soil environment that allows your plants to do this. A tight soil environment where you don't have the airspace, you're not going to see a lot of this. And that's a problem. So when the farmers learned how to do this, and they learned how to change their full point, and they learned how to understand what their soils were really doing, they increased their cotton 2x what they did in the second year. So they went from 2 bale cotton to 4 bale cotton, just learning how to get the water right. And they focused on this transpiration. And when you understand that and understand how important this transpiration is, now you can understand, okay, well, we're going to eventually run out of water. That's okay, because here's what we've learned in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, we lose more yield up here with waterlogging than we do down here, especially with modern hybrids. Think about modern corn hybrids. A lot of them, this drought tolerance has been built into things. Guys, think about it. That's the DNA of the plant. It doesn't like wet feet. You need water that will drain through, hold, become available, oxygenate really quick. That's the environment that you want, right? So when you think about this, this is maximum oxygen availability in that root zone, allowing the plant to pull up a massive amount of water and nutrition all at one time. That's what you want. That's what you want to think about when your plants are pulling up food. Now, there's two ways, there's two times that you're going to see these bigger stair steps happen. One is in the early stages, you've got these small stair steps because you have a small plant. As your plant starts growing, you're going to start adding deeper roots. They're getting bigger plants. They're just like kids. You know, as your kids grow up, they eat more, right? They're going to pull in more. So you're going to start to see these bigger stair steps, first and foremost, with your water usage as the plant grows. This is, again, though, what you have to really think about as the plant is growing. When do you irrigate? How much do you irrigate? If you get those early season rains, you've got to be able to go in and really, I mean, really, you got to be able to drain water out fast so you can keep that root system growing. But you also want to hold a lot of water so you don't restrict its growth. This is what really got me thinking about, what we're doing here with GHA and humics and things of that nature. We need a massive amount of carbon in that soil so we can aerate that system to hold a lot of water, drain water quickly, and store water at a highest level. Those are things to think about. If you're irrigating these first couple irrigation events right up here, I want you to think about that for a minute. We don't want to refill our soil profile. We don't want to irrigate all the way to the top. We want to irrigate just enough. If nature doesn't give us rain, if God doesn't give us a rainstorm, we have irrigate just enough that we can keep the root system developing. Duplicate rain. Duplicate a rain and shut off. That way you can get this soil system. If your soil is infiltrating water the right way, it will push water really deep, really fast. Remember, it's pulling a data set every 30 minutes. If you can push water down into that 24 and 32-inch root zone, and you can do that in 30 minutes to an hour, guys, you're not going to have a drainage issue. You're going to have a nice, healthy soil that can pull water in fast, store it at a high level. You're going to be able to make amazing things happen with this, okay? This is exciting when you get soil to this level. But I'm going to show you a condition in the next slide that most people don't have soil like this. They have tighter soil. They have soil that struggles to breathe, and it looks a lot different than this. Jason, is there any questions come in yet? I thought I saw something come up.
Yeah, hold on, I gotta get it. I suspect this is from Jordan. I suspect over irrigation was the biggest reason for underwhelming yields in southern and central Nebraska this past year.
100%. I see way more yield loss under too much water than not enough. That's a common factor across the board. At the end of the day, if you want to maximize yield, you maximize your air oxygen relationship. That's really your air water oxygen relationship. You have to learn how to manage the system. That's what you're really, really wanting to learn how to do. And when you can do that, now you're learning something that is just mind-blowing in the agronomic world, because what you do in a lab test in peat soil and all this and that, beautiful, nice, talk about all this really fancy stuff you can do, and then you bring it out to the real world and you're wondering, why don't my chemicals work? Why don't my biology work? Why is this not working? It needs oxygen. There's a lot of great products out there that get a bad name because they don't have good oxygen. Okay. I'm going to show you this one. This is a poor soil system. And then if we have time, I'm going to show you a real life scenario, real farmer who's doing some cover crops. He's doing humics. He's doing a lot of the things that we talk about. Cover crops are not always the best fit everywhere. I understand that. There are alternatives. So we'll talk about it. But this is an example of what a tight soil looks like. And I want you to think about what I'm about to show you in terms of preseason moisture and also in terms of in-season moisture availability to the plant. Those are two things I want you to think about. What's happening in this soil before I plant my crop? What's happening in the season when my crop is growing? Okay. So this was actually a soil sensor we put in 23. So by the way, our probes that we use today are permanently installed. You put them in, you leave them in, they run 365 days a year. So that's how we get this kind of data, where we've got water data coming in before we ever put the probe out or before we ever plant the crop. So we've got our sensors now are guaranteed for 10 years. So they're a 10-year permanently installed soil sensor, and you're going to learn a lot about your root zone. So this is before we ever planted a crop. And it went in, this is February of 23. And here we had a wetting event. Okay, moisture came down, filled up our 8-inch and our 12-inch root zone fairly quickly. You can see the big increase in moisture here. But then this 20-inch root system, pay attention to this, guys. The 20-inch root system, right after that wetting event, it had a slow increase over 5 days. Over 5 days, that wetting front, it was soaking water down through that soil profile. Not good, okay? When you start thinking about that wetting front, if it's holding water above that 20-inch root zone and it's slowly pulling it down, that's not healthy. That's not what you want your soil to be able to do. You want your soil to be able to take that water in quick, store it in a lot of different pore space, and stop. You want it to stabilize. So it started to wet up to 20 inches. Now we had another wetting event 5 days later. Interestingly, because we had some moisture here at 20 inches, we increased that moisture content quickly. But look down here at this orange sensor, which is 28 inches. 28 inches below the surface. This had a slow increase for 12 days. 12 days that wetting front was taking place. Guys, this is evidence with a sensor of a very tight soil that is struggling to breathe. It's struggling to infiltrate water. It has no oxygen. It can't have oxygen there. There's a problem here that is allowing the water to go through, and it won't go through. It's struggling to go through. This is a real serious issue. And this is why this is actually a rain-fed field in western Kansas. So this, as a rain-fed environment, I didn't want to put it out on irrigated. I wanted to learn what the soil was doing in this rain-fed environment. So this type of scenario, guys, extremely important to understand, because our soil structures are not such that even if we get a big rain, we've got a soil structure problem. Now, what was interesting, once you got below this 36-inch root zone where we had our main issue, everything was a problem right in here. The last wetting event, get down to 44 inches, our soil changed. Soil conditions, soil aggregates are different. Boom, big increase with one wetting event. Pulled water down, boom. Now, by the time we got to this last wetting event over here, we're actually starting to leach water. So we increased and we drained off and we started leaching water. Not good, because we need to hold that water. So this is an example of what a really, really tough root zone looks like. So the question I always ask farmers is, what do you have in your root zone? After a wetting event, after a rain event, how fast does it move? How far does it go? How much is held? How good was every rain event for you? That's what we really need to understand. Okay. Any questions on that, Chase?
If you could go back one real quick,
You bet.
I think this is why, as we talked about Todd early on with the humics, this is why it's so important for us to get those humics out there and get them to start working into our soils. As you know, this past summer I had the opportunity to get on a field that has had humic spread on it for 12 years, and I would love to slap one of these sensors out there to really see what it's doing. I mean, we want these fields to be sponges, just like you kind of talked. We want the water to be able to get down quick and pull oxygen in with it, but we also want it to have the capability of holding that water longer term. And it goes back to what Todd said at the very beginning. Humic acid can hold 500 times its weight in water. So now we are getting excess water out quicker and moving it through the profile quicker, but we're also storing water longer term for our crop that's out there. So this is why we hammer on the humics as hard, getting our soils opened up. You talked about the 28-inch, how there's a compaction layer there where it took so long to get that water through that. We don't want that, because heavy rains on heavy rains, it's just gonna saturate that soil further and further. And it's not that the upper soil is not fixed, it's you have that layer that now we can't get rid of, that old or that excess water. So that's why this is all so important and well put together, Kylan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why it's so important to get it this understanding that water needs to move through. It needs to find our dry soil. We need to manage that soil structure. The probe in and of itself, the soil sensor in and of itself, is nothing more than a tracking tool of everything that you do, right? In fact, when I think about irrigation, when to irrigate is only about 25% of what I do with the probe anymore. A probe is really in there to help me understand that every decision I make on seed selection, decisions that I make, I don't have the slide in here, but we actually have a slide of 7 years worth of continuous unbroken data. And you see every hybrid, every crop, every system on a full map. I need to send that to you guys. But it's actually really, really cool. And you can see 7 years of unbroken data. And you see the difference of year after year, crop after crop, corn versus soybeans. So amazing what you learn from that. So it's one of those things that we really, really, that's why we focused on the permanent sensor. I did seasonal ones where you put them in, pull them out. Did that for 20 years. It's like restarting brand new every single year. But with this type of data, you're going to know that everything you do on your field, it becomes an improvement or it's a detriment. It's improving your soil or it's hurting your soil. And these sensors allow you to see that all the time. Now, we'll dive into this is a farmer that I work with. This is right around Fremont, Nebraska. It was one of those years, 24 was those years we got massive amounts of rain over and over and over. And this guy's a big cover crop guy. And he's been working on his soil with humics and covers and doing a lot of different things for so many years. And about this point in time, we get a couple of these really big rain events. And I called him and I said, hey, when your neighbors ask you, how much rain did you get? Tell them all of it. That's your answer. It's not about what was in the rain gauge. It's what's in the root zone. So if the water's in the root zone, it's good irrigation. It's a good rain. Water in the rain gauge doesn't matter to me. Water in the root zone is what matters to me. And that's all that really matters to the plant is can the plant access it? Is it in the root zone? Well, I haven't looked at a rain gauge in probably 15 years because I quite honestly don't care what's in the rain gauge. I care what's in the root zone. So when I look at this data and I'm looking about this time frame right here, and I'm telling the farmer, I'm like, man, dude, you got all this rain and you held all of that water in your root zone. So I said, when your neighbors ask, how much did you get? Just tell them all of it because your soil held onto all that moisture. Now, this was a cover crop, so it's trying to draw moisture back out. And right here, he finally got his crop planted about this stage. It was late June. It just kept raining. He finally got the corn planted. And here about the middle of July, actually, this is the 1st of July right here. And this is the 21st of July. So from the 1st of July until the 21st, that's 21 days. 21 days in July with zero irrigation. Okay. Now, he didn't get planted until, this mid-June timeframe. So his plants weren't real big, but this is 21 days without any irrigation. Now, if you remember when we talked earlier about those big roots, you want that big transpiration, that high water intake. Look right in the middle of this. I should have highlighted it, but you can see you got small root water uptake, small water uptake, and then all of a sudden big water uptake. You want those big, long stair steps. This blue sensor is actually the top sensor, but it's the driest part of the field in this scenario. So that's why it's down deeper. But you can see those big stair steps. The second sensor, which is actually at 12 inches, you can see the big stair steps here. And then the third one, when this moisture is going down, the roots are developing, you got this root, small stair steps, and then these great big stair steps. That's what you want. Okay. Well, I asked him to go back and I said, okay, you're going to start irrigating. Go ahead and irrigate, but irrigate once and then shut off. So he irrigated once. He put on, I think, 1.20 inch, and then I had him shut the pivot off for 4 days. So it was 4-day circle to get on 1.20 inch, and then he was shut off for 4 days. So that was an 8-day, what we would call an 8-day cycle. And you can see these big stair steps, right? After we irrigated that first time, big stair steps. But there was a problem with this second irrigation event. This second irrigation event, you can see this orange sensor. That's our 4th sensor down into the profile. And it was drawing water. It was just starting to pull out water. And it shut off with this irrigation event. We stalled it out. We never saw those big roots again, or that big water uptake again. But also, if you think about this point right here to this point right here, this is 4 irrigation events. He is recharging the soil. The soil is starting to refill with moisture. And a byproduct of that was we lost our big, long stair steps. We lost those big stair steps. Guys, that's a problem. We're getting too much water too fast. I've even had farmers use this information for marketing because they know their yields dropped if they lose water uptake. Be honest with you, you're going to lose some yield if you lose water uptake. So as you're starting to see that, I was like, dude, you got to slow down the pivot. You're on an 8-day cycle, go to 12. Go to a 12-day circle, and let's try to get those big steps back. So here he irrigated again, and we dropped to a 12-day cycle. And look, finally at the end of that cycle, he was getting those longer stair steps again. That's what you wanted. You want those big, long stair steps. Now, granted, this guy's been doing a lot of work on his soils for a lot of years. He has a very, very moist, good soil that holds a lot of water. That's how he's able to get by with this. If you're new at working with GHA, if you're new at working with Avant, if you're new at getting started with this, you cannot expect this in year 1. But you want to start moving to this with every input that you manage. Every time you put fertilizer or chemical out, think about the effect of it and say, is this absolutely necessary? Because it's going to start impacting my root system. The same is true. This is actually an early season rain. This was January of 26. This is actually the spring. We did a wetting event about 0.60 of an inch out of the pivot. Didn't show a lot here at our deeper profile. This is the second sensor, the green one. But we did another one on the 14th of January, increased substantially all the way down to our 4th sensor. So we're able to see if you do have to pre-water, you got to put stuff out, you're getting early season rains, how effective is that rain? You want to be able to know that. You want to start measuring it and tracking it. And that's what we were able to do here. We also track temperature. So this is 2 seasons of temperature. Not going to go into that a whole lot, but temperature affects biology. It affects nutrient uptake. That's why we watch it really close this time of year. Where's our soil temperatures at? We're going to plant in the right conditions. We're going to stabilize nitrogen the right way based on temperatures. Biology is going to start becoming active or more active at certain temperatures. So we're really learning how to use this information to make really great planting decisions and to make really great recommendations for everything that we're doing biologically. Every decision that we make with our biology, it's like, how warm is the soil? Are we too hot, too cool? Where are we at? What do we need to be, what kind of decisions do we need to be making? This again is just a tool that allows us to learn things about our root zone that we've never been able to do before because it's in there 365 days a year. So again, we use temperature for a lot of that, and those are some of the things we do. And here's some of the things we do to, manage leach prevention, early season, traditional plus amino nitrogen, limit irrigation, humic for carbon stability. During tassel, we're going to use a limited amount of 32% in our higher temperatures. We're going to be testing a lot with aminos this year through the pivots. We're managing our water very, very, very closely. And then late season, maintain plant health. We're shooting to do it without fungicide. I say that cautiously because not everyone in their first year or 2 years is going to be able to do things without fungicide. That's our goal. Don't hit every goal. And the first year, you've got to be careful. We're learning here. We're improving. But a lot of that comes down to what's the level of bricks in the plant? Do we have enough sugar? Is the plant healthy enough to withstand a disease hit? I know GHA and Todd and everybody that we're working with, there's options that we can use at tassel time to make sure and possibly get away from a fungicide application, okay? There are options, but work very closely with your guys to know how to do that. So that's me. That's what I have for you, Chase. So hopefully that brings a little value to you there.
Yeah, and Kylan, a couple things. What is the difference, let's say an inch of rainwater versus an inch of water through the pivot? You look at rainwater is probably structured differently, along with pHs of that. What have you seen in your experience with rainwater versus water pumped out of the soil?
It's hugely different. If you're pumping irrigation water out of the ground, always get a soil sample. Learn how to do this every single year. In my opinion, after 22 years of managing water, the water sample for me is more important than the soil sample when I'm irrigating. The reason being is you saw how much water we're putting out there to put an inch of water on. And if my groundwater, which is way different than rainwater, I'll hit on that in a minute. If my groundwater has contaminants in it of any kind or a salt-based product in it, I need to know that because that's either, as soon as that water hits the ground, it's either going to make the nutrient that I spent all that money on, it's either going to make that nutrient more available or less available as soon as the water hits the ground. Now I have to make a decision. Is that irrigation the right decision for my nutrition? Right? It's not just moisture, but it's nutrition. And there's times when I may just hold off a little bit longer. There's supposed to be a rain coming on the weekend. Rain is, like you said, it's well structured. Rain doesn't have the contaminants of that groundwater. The rainwater you will see on a soil sensor will typically go deeper than a standard irrigation event, especially if there's contaminants in your water. You will see that the water usage is totally different. The crop water uptake is different. Rainwater is more efficient. It's going to be more effective in that soil. So you want to take advantage of all the rain that you can, but remember that pot. If your soil's wet and you get rain, it's going to go through.
But will there be a difference in rainwater with your pot? analogy, or is it water's water in that scenario? Will a rainwater affect your colored pots at the beginning anyway?
Potentially it can, but a lot of it comes down to how wet you are at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
So if you're completely saturated and it's just rain upon rain upon rain, there's no place, there's no dry soil anywhere, right? When there's just no dry soil in the profile, the water comes down, it doesn't know where to go. It's going to be held up from the bottom somewhere. You will start to get that orange effect because your water just starts to get mixed up if there's no dry soil to connect to. But in a typical season, it rains on Monday and it's 12 days and you get another rain, there's plenty of room there. It's going to work exactly the same way. You know, if you take a look at some of the soils that you've worked in and it has a lot of pore space, you can go 20 days and dig down and 8 inches deep, you're going to find moisture. Okay. But that high pore space soil, it will hold a lot up on top. And then those roots will just go out wherever they need to go and they'll go pull it. But there's so much oxygen in there that it's amazing. And the detriment to some groundwater, some water is better than others, but you always want to test your groundwater because if those salts are in there, they start tying things up. They create tightness in that soil. There's not enough carbon there to offset that salt and that negative hit. And the next thing you know, that soil just very slowly over time gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And a lot of it's the effect of groundwater. So you've got to be very, very careful that you use groundwater in a smart way because it will have the potential to tighten up your soil, which then makes your rain events not as good either. So it's just this continuous struggle.
Yep. One other thing, I had a guy tell me one time, whenever it comes to irrigation, he told guys, stress your plant and then be ready at the end to make up for it. But with the grass, so I just wanted to kind of talk on that. With the graphs that you were showing us,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with actually putting your crop through stress. It has 100% effect on the amount of oxygen in your soils. And he's probably not wrong that we need to take a break from irrigation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to allow that oxygen into our soils, but he's not in the correct in the sense of when you can actually watch what's going on in our soils, we may need to irrigate even if it's in early June because it's the process of making sure that crop is not struggling. We want our roots to continue to grow deeper, but we don't want to stop those roots by overwatering at the same time.
100%. You're a man of wisdom, Chase.
I wouldn't say that,
but well, what you're saying is you don't want to stress your plant. You want to optimize your plant's growth potential.
Yep.
Right? That's what you want to do. And depending on the airspace in your soil, depending on, the crop that you're growing, depending on your soil conditions and soil type, soil structures, everything, you may need to give that a shot of water if nature's not giving it to you. Give it one shot of water and then shut off the pivot. The hard part for a lot of irrigators, like, oh, I've already irrigated, or hey, it's dry on the top 3, 4, 5 inches. I need to irrigate. No, replicate what nature would do. Give it a shot of water. Let those root systems grow. Let those roots go down and then go back and listen to the plant. Listen to the plant. It'll tell you when it wants more water. It'll tell you when it's ready. And the root zone is an amazing storyteller if we learn to listen to it. And that's what I've learned over the years is there comes a point in time like soybeans are like, oh, I don't irrigate soybeans until August 1st or this and that. I understand exactly what they're saying, which is concept of stress the plant. However, the maximum yield in beans that I've had, we may have to go and give it a shot of water, boost those roots once, they'll take off and then they'll grow like wildfire for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then boom, you're into your bloom stage and you're ready to go. But you just got to be able to control yourself and shut the pivot off after you do something like that and not let it keep running. And that's where we make our mistake is we irrigate once, then we think we're into irrigation season and we just keep going. It's not what you want to do.
Well, thank you, Kylan. Thank you, Todd. Do we have we're at the hour mark, so don't feel obligated to stay on, but is there any questions that people have? I think we got a couple of really smart people on here that can probably get it figured out.
You can tell where Garrett's from. Don't say wildfires, he said.
Yeah.
Okay, wrong terminology. Very good point.
You know, a couple years ago, we're 100% dry land here in northeastern Illinois, and we saw it in our fields. I mean, everybody ran out of water about the third week in July, and we held on to water until the second week of September. And that was the difference between 120 bushel corn difference. I mean, guys that were farming around us just had a wreck. They ran out of corn. Excuse me, I'm sorry, ran out of water third week in July. That corn pretty much died off, and we held on to it all the way up to the second week of September. So our corn went 245, and everything else around us was like 120, 130. But we had that profile filled up, and right now, we're really dry here. I mean, we none of our tiles are running at the moment, but I've come to the conclusion, and Chase, you were at that field you were in last summer. If I have the profile filled up and we're 100% dry land, and I can get 4 inches of timely rain during the season, I can still raise a really good crop because we can have roots. And I mean, I've dug down, I've taken the backhoe out, and it's just like coffee grounds all the way down to the tile lines. So yeah, the humics, I can just tell you, I mean, from a fact, because we use them all the time. And Kylen, thank you so much. This is very educational, man. I think everybody that has a pivot needs to hear this message. It was very informational. I gleaned a lot out of it. I mean, it's things now, you can visually see what's going on. I mean, we talk about what humics do, but we're all visual people. We want to see it. Yeah, we drive the pentrometer in the ground, and then sometimes we drag the backhoe out just to dig up, some things just to see what's going on. But what a bunch of great technology, and thanks for the invitation today, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you've displayed.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we're all learning together, and what I've learned from you on humics and soil airspace, our whole entire client base, all of our customers, all of our internal team, we're all learning to get to that level, and that's why we're using sensors to measure that improvement. And I don't know that we really, when you're not looking at it, you made a good point. We're visual people. When we're not looking at it, or if we don't understand what we're looking at, man, it can really be detrimental to some of our decisions. And we want to get away from decisions that hurt us long term.
Agreed.
And you all heard it. Todd's gonna get his backhoe out, and the guys from Kansas and Nebraska can come to Illinois, and we'll do a root dig on his farm this year. So you all heard it firsthand.
Yeah.
I'll be there from Minnesota. I got a question, Kylen.
Okay, Jake.
You mentioned the soil GDUs. With that probe, from what I understand, you're able to calculate this by the day, correct?
The temperatures?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see the temperature reading for every 30 minutes.
I think that, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to go away from the water, but I think that's vastly important because I feel like we focus on GDUs as the plant grows, but there's a difference between the GDUs on top versus below. And I think we also
100%.
should learn that based on how soil pathogens function. And so I'd also be intrigued to learn more on that side of things.
So you bring up a really great point. Let me share. I'm going to share my screen outside of presentation mode so I can zoom in here and show you guys. So this is a soil moisture sensor that we're watching tracking temperature on, and you can see as we got into our late season December timeframe. Remember, the blue line is the top sensor, the green one is the second, and the pink sensor is the one that's all the way at the bottom. Okay, so we get into December. The pink line, the pink sensors are warmer part of the profile. That's the deeper one. Right at the surface, we're really cold. And you can see just how cold it is. I didn't put the, down to 31 degrees down here at 8 inches. So we get really cold down here. We have a period where we're frozen. It's really cool. And then when we start to warm up, you get over here in that March timeframe, you can see then how the top sensor moves back to the top. The soil's warm. But the reason I bring that up, you mentioned pathogens, you mentioned, biology activity, this and that and the other. The reason that I actually laid this out is I wanted to see the difference in temperature from season one to season two. We actually thought we had a longer warm period in 24 than we did in 25 because we had a lot of moisture in 25. We actually had more heat longer in 25 than we did in 24, but we didn't know that. Okay. So we had more rainfall. Rainfall affects your soil temperatures differently than irrigation. So these were all different things that we started learning just by watching the temperatures. But if you can start to grasp and see trends of how biology functions, how certain inputs work differently, how your nitrogen moves, you'll start to correlate it back to the temperature, which is why it's so important to have that continuous unbroken temperature data so you can start seeing the difference in biology, et cetera. There's just so many things you can learn with that. And we're still learning on it all the time. The next phase of the probe, the next series of sensors, we're actually going to add some EC sensors. We're going to be learning with that as we move forward. So it's just a lot of really cool things that we're going to be learning as we continue forward.
And you're telling me that you're going to implement the EC sensors on the probes then?
Eventually, yes. Yes.
Wow.
They're working on the technology now to make sure we get the right type of EC sensor because there's probes out there with EC sensors, but they're hit and miss. Can you trust them? What are we really reading? So there's some work being done to make sure we get a good EC reading, and we'll start tracking that too in the future. We're probably 2 years away from that. So that's one of the things that we're learning. The thing that I'm taking away from it with temperature and moisture alone, we're doing so much already that by the time we get to that level with the sensor, I'm pretty excited. We'll have enough knowledge in our fields from temperature and moisture movement alone. Then we can really start adding in and learning those components. But you got to get started. And starting with moisture and temperature moves you so far down the road that then you're actually ready for things like EC.
Very cool.
And on the same sense, I mean, if we're learning or if we know our soil temperatures, um, even those starters, what is extremely beneficial with warmer soil temperatures or cooler soil temperatures. I mean, we can probably know better going to the field based off temperature. Because if you put the
Oh,
wrong
yeah.
stuff out at the wrong time and your soil's cool, what are you? Who are you bringing to the party that can actually hurt you?
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is fantastic.
Well, one you bring up an interesting point. One thing to really think about is phosphorus. A lot of people put 1034O out with their planters, but 1034O, that phosphorus component is going to tie up pretty fast. Depending on the temperature of your soil, it will also determine how long or how available your phos is going to be to that crop. So that's one of the things we use with the sensors is, okay, if I'm going to put this starter out, or I'm going to put that starter out, or this product down, am I in the right conditions to optimize that?
Even
And it's
biology, is my soil warm enough for me to actually get a benefit out of the biologicals that I'm putting out there?
100%, 100%. If you're putting biologicals out and your existing biology can't do a lot, your new biology is not going to be able to do a lot. So you've got to work those environments and your expectations accordingly. So,
I'm kind of curious to see if a guy can register, not to be the weirdo. Jason told me this, so if you can register biology and the friction heat, if you will, in the furrow from those guys getting excited.
that would be an interesting study.
Yes.
Pulling Jason into this, poor guy.
He's not here. It's a safe call.
He's sitting right beside. Yeah, he's there.
Sitting right in front of you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Any other questions?
All right.
Very
Well, Chase,
good.
I appreciate you jumping me on, man. This is it's been fun.
Been fantastic. So
Yeah, it was
Todd,
excellent.
love your
Thank you.
insight, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate being a part of it.
Yep. Well, guys, I do appreciate it. You know, several of you guys are already working with us. We're doing a lot of things with you already. And but if you've got a question on soil sensors, if you're already using sensors and you want to figure out, hey, is this thing going to be able to help me? Let's have a conversation. I mean, we can look at your data that you have already. I'm a huge fan today of the permanent sensor. It's the only one that we're actually installing anymore. If people are looking for seasonal probes, we've got friends, I'll recommend you to them. But as far as our company goes, we're 100% permanent install because of the value of that long-term data. We're all about soil health and soil structure, oxygen, things of that nature. So we have to use permanent sensors to actually get there. So,
okay. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you, everyone, for being here, and we'll see what we come up with next for our next topic. So, thank you all,
awesome.
and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.